Good morning, everybody. My name's Quincy Hensel. I'm with the Portland Regional Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome you all to today's event. GWI presents B Corporations, Business as a Force for Good. So like all chamber virtual events, today's event is free. You can follow all the happenings we have going on at the chamber, as well as see all of our recorded events, including this one, if you visit our website, portlandregion.com. And today we have a really amazing panel of presenters. I am excited for today's presentation. Each of our presenters are here from a certified B Corporation, which, as you will learn, is no easy feat to reach the status of a B Corp. Our moderator today is Todd Bachelder of Mascoma Bank. And joining him are four really good chamber friends and panelists. We have with us today Ben Conniff from Luke's Lobster, Rob Todd from Allagash, Becky McKinnell of iBec Creative, and today's event host and sponsor is Kerem Durdag of GWI. So with that, I would love to invite my good friend Kerem to say a few words. Thanks for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having us, Quincy. An absolute delight and joyous occasion to be joined by my friends, Todd, Becky, Ben, and Rob, in having a conversation about B Corp. I truly believe that this is the way of the 21st century and how companies and societies and communities can be relevant with each other. It's part of the social contract. So happy to host this and have the conversation. So thank you for having us. And with that, a video that is from GWI, but indicative of all the good things that we're going to do together as a B Corp community.
A historic culture shift is underway. Companies are harnessing the power of business and the community to address society's greatest challenges.
Wow, thank you so much.
GWI is proud to be a part of this critical movement. Learn more about how certified B corporations like GWI are using business every day as a force for good. Visit bcorporation.net.
That was excellent. Thank you, Kerem. And with Kerem at the helm of GWI, it is no surprise you guys are a B Corp. I'll just tell the audience that if you ever want to brainstorm ways to make our world a better place, Kerem is your guy. He and I have had some really awesome and inspiring conversations over the years. So we're really excited to have you here. Thank you for all that you do in the community. Thank you for your support of our organization. It's just a wonderful partnership, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
All together.
And with that, I'd love to turn the program over to Todd Bachelder from Mascoma Bank.
Thank you, Quincy, and thank you, Kerem, for sponsoring this event. I wanted to just quickly run through about 5 or 6 slides to perhaps put today's conversation into a little better context for folks. Fortunately, given all the issues, societal issues we're dealing with today, there are more and more companies that are effectively thinking about and talking about social responsibility, social environmental responsibility. You may very well have seen, I think we got some slides coming up here. Yeah. Second slide, Dan, would be great. Many of you may have seen the fall of 2019 that the Business Roundtable, which is a trade association of the CEOs of some of the biggest companies in this country, took out a full-page advertisement in the Wall Street Journal. And they started that open letter to the public by saying, Americans deserve an economy that allows each person to succeed through hard work and creativity and lead a life of meaning and dignity. And basically the statement went on to note that companies of all sizes and shapes really needed to be thinking more broadly about not just shareholders, but stakeholders. And specifically, they went on to call out that fact that companies really needed to be thinking about investing in employees, bringing more value to their consumers, dealing fairly and ethically with suppliers, supporting their communities, et cetera. And it was signed by 184 of some of the biggest CEOs of some of the biggest companies here in the country, and actually in the world, ExxonMobil, Walmart, et cetera. That having been said, next slide. I think the even better news is there are a lot of companies now that are not just talking the talk or thinking about this. They're walking the walk, so to speak, and their walks have been certified or validated, if you will. B Labs, and I'll get into a little bit about them. B Labs basically defines a certified B Corp as businesses that meet the highest standards of verified social and environmental performance, public transparency, and legal accountability. And they are obviously seeking to balance profit and purpose. B Labs is the nonprofit actually based in Pennsylvania that is working with companies around the globe to promote businesses as a force for greater societal good. And it's B Lab that is essentially responsible for certifying that companies have met these high standards. And specifically, it's B Corp, certified B Corps are companies that have scored 80 points or better on B Lab's business impact assessment. And points are basically awarded for companies' positive impact with respect to governance, employees, community, and the environment. And it's required that on an ongoing basis, certified B Corps are in fact recertified every 3 years. That is, they have to take the business impact assessment and score at least 80 or better, hopefully better, as they move forward. Next slide, Dan. I think the other good news is that worldwide, you've got at this point 3,500 companies from around the world that have gone through B Lab's business impact assessment and have been certified. And they're in 70 different countries, and they represent over 150 different industries. Some of these companies, I'm sure many of you are familiar with, some that are headquartered in the US, but do business here and all over the world would include Patagonia, Cabot Cheese, Ben & Jerry's, Seventh Generation, The Body Shop, et cetera. And there are a lot of, or a growing number, I should say, of B Corps headquartered outside of Maine with offices or retail locations, effectively feet on the ground here in the state. And they would include Mascoma Bank, Grove Collaborative, and Athleta, to name just a few. And here we have right on this slide, all of the Maine-based certified B Corps. And I understand the chamber had done a similar event a few years ago. And at that point, there were only 3 or 4 Maine-based certified B companies. And at this point, you'll see the logos of 10 of them. There actually was another one, InSource Renewables, that has recently joined forces with Revision Energy. So they're under the Revision Energy umbrella. So we've seen some great momentum and growth here in Maine of the B Corp community. And I guess shout out to Androscoggin Bank, which is the newest member of the B Corp community here in Maine. They have just gotten certified within the last few months. So without further ado, I want to introduce today's panelists. As Quincy said, it's a great panel to talk about Maine B Corps as a force for good, and essentially the group that has been there, done this, so to speak, over the last few years, or is in the process of doing this. We've got Kerem Durdag, who's the president and chief operating officer of GWI. They've been certified since 2020. Founded in 1994, and they're offering reliable fiber optic internet services to businesses and consumers here in Maine. Rob Todd, founder and brewmaster at Allagash Brewery, certified B company since 2019, and in fact, one of Maine, or I think Maine's first benefit corp. Maybe Rob can get into that just a little bit later. And as many of you know, you'll find Allagash beer all across the country, around the country. Becky McKinnell, who is the founder and CEO of iBec Creative, She's in the process of going through B Corp certification, though she founded her company in 2006, and her team includes 14 developers, designers, marketers, and brand strategists. They work with companies, nonprofits, and some governmental entities here in Maine. And last but not least, Ben Conniff. Ben's co-founder and chief innovation officer of Luke's Lobster. They've been a certified B Corp since 2018. They were founded in 2009. And as many of you know, they provide sustainable seafood to customers around the country. And actually with restaurants, not just here in the country, the US, they've got restaurants in Japan and Singapore as well. So without further ado, let's just kind of jump into this. And I guess I would begin with asking each of the panelists why they chose to become B Corps. Ben, why don't we start with you?
We had that conversation in 2017. We've been following the B Corp movement for a few years and feeling like we aligned very well with all of its values, but hadn't taken the plunge knowing it was a big effort. And then around the Super Bowl in 2017, another larger restaurant company basically ran a TV ad where they seemed to have lifted all of our talking points about sustainability and community and traceability of seafood. And they had paid a fisherman something like $50,000 to say they worked so well with this big restaurant chain. And it felt so much like what we say and do. And it was so clear that there was nothing behind the claims at all. We realized, claims of sustainability and of giving back to the community aren't regulated the way something like certified organic is. So we started talking about what we could do that other companies that don't walk the walk could not. And becoming certified as a B Corp was the way that we could tell our customers and our employees, these aren't just words to us. These are actions that are in the DNA of our company that we will always pursue. And going after that certification was kind of our proof point.
Great. Rob, how about you?
Similar story, probably there will be a lot of similar stories on this front, but there are basically three tenets to B Corp: employees, community, and the environment. And since day one, I've always felt an obligation to all of these stakeholders. And I started alone, so didn't have any employees for the first year. But subsequently, as we've grown, our leadership team has always felt an obligation to these stakeholders. And on the employee front, we've always offered full healthcare coverage option. Lots of transparency for a privately held company. We regularly do all staff meetings, share a lot of information that I think isn't commonly shared by privately owned companies. And we involve our employees in a lot of unique ways, like with recipe formulation. It's not Jason, the brewmaster, or me, the owner, that does all the recipe formulation. If any employee has an idea for a recipe, they can brew it on a little 10-gallon system. And a lot of those beers have become full-scale releases, like Nowadays, which just came out. That was Jason Winchester. He works down on the packaging lines, came up with that beer. On the community front, we've always had a strong philanthropy program. I think pre-COVID, we were up to about $350,000 a year that we were giving to the local community. And a lot of cool initiatives like our 1 million pounds of Maine grain we committed by this year, 2021. 5 years ago, we committed to buy 1 million pounds of Maine grown and processed grain. And lots of initiatives on the environmental front. But, given that all of these stakeholders have always been a priority for us, we felt like if we were held accountable with really rigorous standards in a transparent way, we just simply do better on all these fronts. And it was an inspiring proposition, a little bit of a daunting proposition. We also kind of wrestled for a few years with, do we want to make this commitment? But we ultimately decided to make the commitment. We're the first Maine B Corp brewery in the state of Maine. And, I guess the short answer would be we just felt like if we got held to a higher standard, we'd do better with things that are important to us.
Yeah. Becky, you're going through the process right now. Why did you choose to head down this path?
Yeah, so we're in the certification process. We submitted our B impact assessment earlier in March. So we're awaiting to be assigned an assessor to finish up the certification process. For me, I've always cared about iBec being a good company, and I deeply care about making sure that I'm bringing joy to my employees, we're bringing joy to our clients, that we're there for the community. And really this past year has helped me solidify what that means and how I want to make it official moving forward. So in the beginning of 2020, one of the initiatives that we started at the company was how we could be a carbon neutral company. So as a group, we calculated how much carbon emissions were created from commuting to work. We changed over our electricity to 100% renewable energy. We calculated the emissions from the servers that our websites are hosted on. And in total, we found that we had 147,000 pounds of carbon that were created because of iBec existing. And we offset those carbon emissions with carbon credits with TerraPass. And it was really the first time that we all worked together as a company and did something in a measurable way and made it public and shared on our blog and with our clients about how we were setting a benchmark for our carbon neutrality as a company, and then being accountable for making sure that it goes down moving forward, and that we're doing everything we can to be a force for good. And then the pandemic hit, and it was this moment where I've never in my existence of iBec, it's been 15 years now, did I realize how important websites are and how important e-commerce is. And just knowing that we were there at a really stressful time for our clients, and we were there for the community. We gave away a ton of free work. We started a bunch of corporate matching donations with employees to raise money for food insecurity and racial justice. And then with the Black Lives Matter movement, one of the books that I read last year was How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi, and I highly recommend that book. My takeaway from the book is that you have to take action, and my realization that I can't just think and feel being a good company, or I can't think and feel being not a racist. I have to be anti-racist. I have to measure how iBec is quote unquote good, and B Corp is the obvious answer to me for that.
Great. Kerem, you made reference to the social contract, which I thought was good. Interesting. You don't usually hear that in business context, but why did you guys become a B Corp?
Well, for us, I think Ben mentioned the word DNA. It's in our DNA. It's something that is our way of being. And as Rob and Becky also mentioned, we are believers in being accountable, right? Hold our feet to the fire. People can sign all the manifestos they want. They can put their name on all the ads they want. They can yak on interminably for how great they are. But there has to be a mechanism to hold our feet to the fire. And this is it. This is a tangible manifestation of standards and benchmark if you want to do good. The other thing, honestly, for us is, so we are the first broadband carrier in the entire United States that's a B Corp. That's either we're nuts or we're onto something, right? So I think we're onto something together with being nuts. But the thing is this, right? So the internet is the underpinning of civilization. I made Rob laugh, which is great. But we're the underpinning of civilization. Water, sewer, power, those are things. Now it's the internet. It's been there, but now it's manifestly becoming very real. As the underpinning of civilization, it means we have a financial, moral, and ethical obligation to make sure that there is civilization that participates on an equitable basis. So we shouldn't be at the behest of a monopoly. We shouldn't be at the behest of infrastructures that disallow that kind of a growth to happen on a human scale. So we have to be intentionally inclusive. We have to be intentionally thinking about what it means to close the economic divide. We have to be intentionally sort of leaning in and saying, you know what, this is what it means to have internet for everybody that's reliable, repeatable, robust. And oh, by the way, we have to do it in a way so that our kids and their kids are proud of what we did. So think of it, in the 1920s and 30s, there was a rural electrification program. We all over here are the children of that program, right? In 100 years, they'll be saying the same thing about the infrastructure, the internet infrastructure that's getting set up today. So we have to be cognizant of the scale of the decisions that are being made and what it actually distills down. Is it actually good? Does it actually translate to certain things that we should be all proud of? So for those reasons, we really feel very passionately that the consumer and the environment need to be at the middle of that decision-making process. And this is one mechanism that allows that, right? So if they're in the middle of it, if we're all in the middle of it, it is then a social contract. And I know that it may have sort of these tinges of, vestiges of, how should I say, words that may not matter because we are such an individualistic sort of society. But I think the tide has shifted, right? It's the 21st century. It's a global economy. And in my humble opinion, GWI's humble opinion, you have to be intentional about doing things that are inclusive. You can't just do it out of self-interest anymore. You just cannot. The cost is too high. The price for the next generations are immense. So we can't just abrogate ourselves and just be on the back foot and say, I'll be all right. So that, as Becky said, how do we participate? How do we participate? And this is one mechanism. It's not the only one, but this is one mechanism.
Yeah. Terrific. Ben, you've all touched on societal issues, challenges, et cetera, and how you're all as certified B Corps, how we are all as certified B Corps trying to address those issues. But what are some of the tangible ways in which Luke's has benefited from being a B Corp?
I always like to bring this up, especially if you're talking to the Chamber of Commerce. It's all business people out there. And at the end of the day, no matter how good a person you are, if you lose money, your business goes away. And we always have to remember that. But at the same time, we need to create this space and this opportunity for businesses to do good, to do all the things that Rob and Kerem and Becky have been saying. So I love to point out the ways that we've actually benefited as a business beyond just the things we all feel are important and all feel good about doing. So, one of those is it's not just your end consumer who cares about this. There's a lot of middlemen in the process. So the example for us is Whole Foods. When we certified at the beginning of 2018, we were in a situation where, our main business was running lobster roll restaurants that took lobster knuckle and claw meat and put them in buns to simplify a very complex business. But what we really did was we bought live lobster directly from fishermen for a preferential price and brought them into a facility in Saco where we had to figure out what to do with the whole lobster, not just the knuckle and claw that went into those lobster rolls. So we had a huge amount of lobster tails, sometimes in excess of lobster meat. We had lobster shell that we didn't want to put into a landfill or into compost. We had all these different products. And suddenly we went from just thinking of ourselves, our restaurants as a customer, to needing to find new customers for all of this product so that we could make an antenna to tail, if you will, utilization of what we were purchasing from fishermen and giving us the ability to then return more value back to those fishermen and their communities. Whole Foods, seeing that we were a B Corp in 2018, basically asked us to take over the lobster business for their entire nationwide chain of grocery stores. So we've been able to work with them first on just putting lobster and other seafood into their seafood case, where you walk up and order, but then developing branded products with the Luke's Lobster brand on it for their freezer case. And that relationship, that was all spawned because they appreciated our B Corp certification and what that meant about our commitment to our suppliers and our commitment to the environment. That led to this amazing relationship where they are now, our biggest customer besides ourselves. They've given us the Global Supplier of the Year award and the Mission-Oriented Business Award. And we continue to grow with them. We continue to innovate new products with them. And none of that would happen if they hadn't seen this is a B Corp and therefore we can trust them. And they're going to do right by us. They're going to do right by fishermen and by the environment. And that's extended. KeHE is one of the biggest natural food distributors in the country, and they're a certified B Corp. And because of that, they've given us definite preferential treatment in getting our products out around the country and not asking for as many of the promotional dollars that non-B Corps get asked for. There's so many ways once you put that good out into the world that you see it come back to your business in tangible financial ways that I think it's just always important to point that out. It's not that your business is just making a bunch of sacrifices. You're doing good, you're enshrining that good, and then it will benefit your business. I virtually guarantee it.
Yeah. Great. Rob, how has being a B Corp impacted your decision-making through the pandemic here? How's it impacting how you're thinking about the world post-pandemic?
So, the pandemic had a serious impact on our business. On last year, on March 16th, every one of our 50 distributors called and canceled all their draft orders. And that was about 65% of our business went away overnight. And then another 5% went away because we sell some cans and bottles in the restaurant and bar channel. And, our markets are markets like LA, Chicago, DC, San Francisco, New York, Boston. So like a laundry list of markets that got shut down. So, I think most businesses that are impacted that severely without any warning at all would go straight to stakeholders to basically to free up resources and survive. And there probably would have been a lot of savings to be had if we did things like cut employee benefits, eliminate our philanthropy program, eliminate sustainability initiatives. There's no question that much of a loss of business so soon after we became B Corp certified was a huge test of our principles to the commitment to the stakeholders. But I really did feel like COVID, it did not absolve us from our obligations to the stakeholders. And what it really did is it just pushed us to look at other ways to come up with resources that didn't negatively impact stakeholders to navigate the crisis. There's no question we had to make huge cuts. We just looked at things that didn't negatively impact stakeholders. We also were able to pivot. Luckily, we had just put a high-speed canning line in just a couple months before COVID hit. So we were able to retool our business in a lot of ways to sell packaged beers. But really, I feel like we've been creative, and on a lot of fronts, we've been able to enhance stakeholder commitment. Just a few examples on the sustainability front during COVID, and actually we just kind of finished this a couple weeks ago. We launched a really cool co-op program for brewers, and there are nearly 200 brewers in the state. And as brewers, we have a lot of, especially packaging materials, where it's very difficult to find recycling channels, and a lot of these materials sometimes end up in landfills. And one example is stretch wrap. There's a lot of stretch wrap that comes in on pallets or raw materials that we use. Those pack tech plastic tops that are on 4-packs that are commonly seen. So, a lot of those materials really interfere with the recycling channels. So we started a co-op, and over at our warehouse now, we make this available to any brewer in the state. Brewers can collect these materials, which at their scale, it's difficult for them to find suitable recycling channels. We collect them, we palletize them, and we're operating at a scale where we can actually get these back to suppliers, and they can be directly recycled. We've also done things like we just signed on in support of an EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility initiative that was launched by the National Resource Council of Maine. That's something that's actually going to cost us money, because any consumer packaged goods company is going to have to pay into a system for all of the waste materials that end up at the customer's door. So, of course, to get our beer to the customer, there's a 4-pack carrier, there's a pack tech top. So all that's going to get weighed. Consumer packaged good companies are going to be charged for that waste, and then those funds will go to communities to establish recycling programs. So we didn't lay off any employees. We were able to shift employees around the company. We had a lot of demand on the package side, so we were able to move employees from our tasting room over to the packaging lines. We stayed very engaged on the shareholder front, but it just looked different. One of the things we did, because our revenues have been strained during COVID, so we had to come up with creative ways to give back. We did a beer giveaway to frontline workers, it was much more popular than we thought it would be. We created a huge traffic jam, but I think it made a lot of people in the community happy. So, I suspect a lot of these creative approaches to engaging with stakeholders are going to continue post-COVID.
Yeah. No, I love how you elaborated and emphasized creativity and collaboration. I've noticed over the last few years, having just gotten back to Maine and having just gotten into the B Corp world, that we've got a wonderful group of B Corps here, well, Maine, New England, et cetera, that are working together very, very creatively and synergistically and with some great collaboration. So glad you brought that point out. Becky, what did you wish you knew before you started down this B Corp certification path, or what are you learning as you head down this path?
Yeah, well, one thing I would love to share with the group is that anybody who thinks that they're too small or not big enough or not established to go through the B Corp certification process, like, go try it. You can go online to the B Impact Assessment, and it's free to create an account, and it will just get your wheels turning about all the different ways you can measure being good at your company. So that would be kind of my first misconception, because I definitely, seeing companies like Patagonia and Ben & Jerry's and Eileen Fisher and just all these established companies being B Corps, it kind of felt like, well, is that me? Am I like, do I belong in that group? But yes, I belong in that group. And I encourage you too, that you also can belong in that group if you're a small company. Yeah. My other piece of advice is just learning to love your handbook. And the handbook, I feel like when I first started, the company was like, oh, can I just copy and paste this from somewhere? But now the handbook is very real, and it's very iBec and very purposeful. And a lot of the things that allow us to check off boxes on the B Impact Assessment are because of things that are in our handbook. So if you're not already very close with your handbook, get close with your handbook, because it's definitely part of the B Corp certification process.
Yeah, great. This might be a good time to give a shout out to Fiona Wilson, Dr. Fiona Wilson of UNH. She's a Mainer, actually lives in Freeport, but through UNH, they have a business impact assessment clinic each semester, and she pairs companies interested in really just exploring this idea and going through the B Impact Assessment. Basically, she and a group of her students help them through that process. So again, another great resource for folks thinking seriously about this. So, Kerem, why should being a B Corp matter to your consumers or customers? Why should it matter that you are? Maybe you can talk just briefly about that.
Because we believe that the consumers should exercise their purchasing power in a way that reflects their values. We believe that they should have choice. We believe they should get performance that's commensurate with the price they pay. So if they pay $60 for an internet, they should exactly get what they're paying for. It should be guaranteed. Their best interest should be at heart. If they're on Zoom call with five of their kids, it shouldn't sputter, jitter, and the wheel of death of life come up. We just don't believe that. So that is important. That is really, really, really important. If they believe that their data should be absolutely private and not be sold for the highest bidder, they should buy from companies that actually believe that. If they believe that the internet should not be throttled and prioritized and that they believe in net neutrality, they should buy from companies who say that and who do that. So it's a question of that ability to lever the economy, right? So if they have the purchasing power, they can essentially bring themselves into the middle of the dynamic, right? So the state's GDP is what, 56 billion? There's 144,000 companies in the state of Maine with 100,000 of them 20 employees or less. Just think of it, right? So if you think about the scale of it, if the 1.3 million citizens of Maine said, I will intentionally do business with these companies because they reflect my values, think of the economic growth that happens. Even if one of those companies adds 3 people to their employee base, or if we add more creativity, innovation, if we get, like for Ben and for Todd and for Becky, the more output of creativity and goods that Mainers then can take advantage of, think of the lever on the economy. Think of the economic divide that shrinks. And I think that is really important to us. The internet should be available to everybody. In parts of rural Maine, they're still on freaking dial-up or close to something like dial-up. That is just inhumane. It's inhumane, right? So they need to be part of the 21st century. In places like Portland, we don't have good internet. Now, how is that possible, right? Because telecommunications companies in the past, over the last 40, 50 years, have been really, really, really good at cherry picking stuff that they want to offer to. And that's not fair. So that's why I believe that if the consumer decides that their values need to be reflected in the purchasing that they want to do, they should bear in. And I think that's, Ben was talking about how that translates to growth or how that translates to long-term sustainability for these businesses. For us, it certainly does. For example, there is funds that are available for municipalities, hopefully coming down the pike now, thanks to the stimulus bill, that will allow municipalities to build infrastructure. That's a tectonic shift, right? So power to the municipalities, to the towns, to the hamlets, to the cities, to build their own infrastructure in collaboration and partnership with private sector. So it's a true private-public partnership that has a public benefit as one big variable in that equation. So what does that mean? For us, it means, hey, we get to partner up with cities, towns, hamlets, municipalities to build infrastructure that reflects the values that they have, to the rules and regulations that they want, to the standards that they want. So if we have a B Corp certification that at least says we have your best interests at heart, we're not here to pillage, we're not here to take advantage of anything, we're here to do this together. And we've done that. So the question becomes, hey, can we do that more now with more friends, peers, colleagues? Because infrastructure exists if you use it well. So for example, here's an example, right? If we build infrastructure in a municipality that the municipality owns and we operate on their behalf, we help to design them, we help to operate it, we help to, make sure the engineering is right. If in 10, 15 years, because of that, you have 4 or 5 other businesses, or if Rob decides, hey, I want to have another, outpost somewhere to be able to brew, but can hook into the 21st century economy, that is a manifestation of how successful that community that outreach then became, right? I get to operate their network. Rob has more employees. In order for him to do marketing, he calls to Becky and says, Becky, I need 4 people over here to help us do this XYZ with 4 other companies. Now Becky sends people, right? Ben opens a restaurant. Now you see vitality, right? It becomes sustainable. So the pie is big enough from a revenue point of view. It's truly, truly big enough. The question is, are we intentional about sharing it? Yeah. And for me, that's why it's important. Yeah. You have to be able to share. You have to be able to collaborate. And for us, it's the one key of trust and validation, because municipalities, especially in the Northeast Corridor, are very hesitant. Culturally, we are hesitant. Culturally, we tend to be introverted. Culturally, we tend to want to be to ourselves. Well, this opens up, right? I can say I have a key for you, Mr. and Mrs. Municipality, that allows you to trust me, and I have your best intentions at heart, together with all my ecosystem friends. Now that's powerful, I think, in the 21st century. Yeah, especially in a state like Maine, where our birth rate is lower. We are the second oldest in the state, in the 48 continuous states, right? So we need to be able to think beyond ourselves. We need to be inclusive enough. Can we get more people from the other places? Can we be more inclusive of the immigrants and the BIPOC community, right? So can we open up? Can we be vulnerable enough? And here's my trust and verification point. I'm a B Corp. I will not take advantage of you.
Yeah, well said. Ben, I know you've also been involved in doing some mentoring or assisting of companies that are considering B Corp certification. I believe you've been working with some other seafood companies, and maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Absolutely. You know, we focus on seafood for a lot of reasons, but one is it's just not an industry where there's a lot of trust. There's a long historical record, and you know, I would say more outside of Maine and outside the U.S. than inside now, but still, you know, rampant fraud in the seafood business and a very well-founded lack of trust. So as we work to kind of spread positive learnings throughout Maine's marine economy, looking at other companies who are great actors and helping them get credit for the work they're doing, and also helping them take on some of the policies that we have taken on that we never would have had we not become a certified B Corp. You folks have been alluding to this, but you know, you certify, the minimum score you need is an 80. So a lot of us, Luke's included, the minute we could get an 80, we put pencils down and just certified because we wanted to get the certification. That means there are hundreds of more points that we hadn't gotten yet. So in 3+ years, we've made huge strides to improve our company in how we track our waste and how we track our carbon footprint, in our diversity and inclusion policies and initiatives within our company. And there are so many great things that we have learned through this process. We're now able to go out to folks that we partner with in business, in the seafood industry, and help them through the exact same process. So, you know, if they're interested, but they're sitting at 50 points now, you know, we can help them with those things that we did to get those additional 30 points. And you know, it's important, like when you think about the Maine brand, the Maine seafood brand, the Maine lobster brand, it's not just about any one company. Same as said for Maine blueberries or anything else. The character of the entire industry matters when you're going out to the broader market. So if we can reduce the carbon footprint, not just of Luke's Lobster, but of Maine's lobster industry, Maine's seafood sector, and we can show that to the world, that's meaningful for our business and all the other businesses beyond. And yeah, some of the bad actors will benefit from that too, but hopefully in the process, we're changing minds and we're changing behaviors. So, you know, I think this is probably true for everybody on this call. Like, you become an evangelist very quickly when you go through this process, because you see how much it improves your business and how much it could improve others, and just the amazing community that we all have together. I mean, Rob contributes to our philanthropic efforts, the Keeper Fund, which makes micro grants to environmental and community initiatives up and down the coast. Becky's building our new website. I'm ready to start working with Kerem as soon as I can get hands on that good internet. Working with Revision on solar. Like, we love working together because we know that having gone through the assessment and passed means you have your act together and you're a great partner to work with. And it really is starting to become a filter. Like, there's a huge solar gold rush right now. I get 7 calls a day from people who want to sell me solar energy. Mm-hmm. It's only one that I pick up, and that's Revision. And that's that B Corp stamp. That does it for me. That helps me know these aren't folks that just saw an opportunity to make a buck and jumped on it.
Right. Yeah, speaking of websites, quick shout out to Becky. She and her iBec team are working diligently right now to roll out a Maine B Corp community website. So stay tuned. It's coming to a screen near you sometime in the next few months, I suspect. So thank you, Becky, for that. Rob, one other quick question. I think we've also got some audience questions perhaps teed up, but one other quick question, Rob. I mean, what were the surprises, or what did you learn going through the B Corp process that you would share with folks?
Couple surprises. The first one was I honestly thought we would ace the assessment. I mean, as Ben mentioned, you need 80 points out of 200, and a focus on stakeholders is something which we've had at this company for a couple of decades, and I thought we would just skate through to an easy approval or accreditation to B Corp. But we only ended up with 83 points, so we barely kind of squeaked through to obtain our B Corp status, which, in some ways I was kind of disappointed because we've been working so much on this for so many years. But in a lot of ways, it's encouraging because I think there's so much opportunity to continue to do work on these fronts. And the B Corp community in B Labs has tons of relationships and tools to support that work. Another thing that surprised me, and I think it's ultimately going to be a valuable lesson for us going forward, is how important it is to have everything documented at the company. And Becky referenced this, having an employee handbook. I would agree with that 100%. Document procedures, job descriptions, written programs in place, plans and goals. In one example of that, one facet of the assessment that I thought we'd get an A+ on is water conservation and water efficiency. And that's been a priority for us for years. And we're really a top performer as a brewery in the industry with water conservation. But it's my recollection we got little to no points on that part of the assessment because we didn't have a written program in place. We verbally talked about it a lot and we measured it and we had success saving water, but there was no written program and plan in place. So we got no credit for that. Subsequently, we have put a written program in place, and lo and behold, we're saving more water and we're even more efficient. So I think this emphasis on documentation, it's going to serve us well. And honestly, I think it's going to be a practice that drops more value to the bottom line of the company.
Yeah. The process is great too, I think, from a continuous improvement standpoint. I mean, you're benchmarking where you are today, and every 3 years you get a chance to reassess where you are and how far further, hopefully, you've come. So that's great. There's been a question about resources. I'd be remiss if I didn't point out there's some other like-minded business leaders and business groups here in the state that are doing some wonderful work. The Conscious Capitalism chapter that Tara Jenkins has founded, a great resource and group of folks. So I would call them out. You've got companies that have committed 1% for the planet. That's actually a worldwide initiative that was started by the founder of Patagonia, Yvon Chouinard, who actually was born and initially raised in Lewiston, Maine. So go Lewiston. But at this point, I think there are 3,000 companies around the world that have committed 1% of their revenues towards environmental causes of one sort or another. And you've also got companies here, or you've also got groups like the New Hampshire Businesses for Social Responsibility. I mentioned Dr. Wilson and the UNH Sustainable Institute or Sustainability Institute. So I guess last but not least, another group or entity people ought to be aware of is the B Local chapter in Boston. They're Boston-based, but they have members throughout the Northeast here, throughout New England, and they're doing some fine work. We've got an informal group here in Portland, a B Champions group that is meeting on a regular basis and trying to work collaboratively. So there are a lot of folks out there you can turn to for some additional information or some additional assistance. And the B Lab website, too, would be a good place for people to start just to get a better sense for what it is to be a B Corp and how this movement is in fact growing and growing very, very quickly. So, Quincy, do you have any specific questions you'd like to ask at this point?
Sure. And ironically, I had to move rooms in my office because my internet was so bad. I actually froze for like the last 2 minutes of this event. So, GWI, I'm going to have a conversation with you. I'm like running around the office, like I've got to get back on this event.
Coming to the rescue.
So I'm in a very colorful room here at the chamber, as you can see. It's lovely background. So Todd, I will apologize. I don't know if you asked the question that's in the chat. If you have not, I will do that, but I may have missed it.
Well, I did see the resource question, and we did just touch a little bit on that, but yeah. Were there others? Have there been others?
There have been others. I think one of the questions, I think Rob touched on this a little bit in the last question you asked him, but people are interested as to what the hardest part of the process was.
Deciding, because it's a journey. For us, it was a year, a little over a year. So it's a ton of work, but it's well worth it. That was the hardest part, just getting organized, making sure intentionally we're all going to make time for it on a senior executive level, because we all made time for it. Every week, we met once a week for a year, reaching out to people like Fiona and UNH helped us. So yeah, just making that commitment and not wavering, because it's a little bit of a slog, but it's so worth it. So worth it.
Becky, how are you engaging your team to get through this certification process?
So we started a social responsibility team at iBec. So there's 5 of us that meet once or twice a month, and we outline our goals for what we're going to work on individually for the upcoming month. And then we have a social responsibility channel in Slack where we're sharing updates about cool things we're seeing in the community or new ways we can be more accessible and inclusive, and also sharing it at our monthly staff meetings, a report of how we're doing on our B Corp process and new updates on what we're doing for company volunteer time, just in being more public about announcing how the company is giving back. Like that was just something I didn't really do a lot. I kind of just did it and didn't talk about it, but now we talk about it once a month at the staff meeting, at least.
Yeah, I'll just add one other thought. I think it's really helpful having a project manager. And that doesn't mean one person going into a room and filling out the whole report, because whoever the project manager is, they're going to have to engage with every single facet of the operation. I don't think there's one person in the organization that could answer every single one of those questions. They're going to have to be, in our case, engaging with production and engaging with HR, engaging with marketing, the engineering team. But to have one organized, project-oriented person kind of that takes charge of the project is really, really helpful. And there's not only back and forth with every facet of your organization, there's back and forth with B Labs as well. So having a project manager was a huge help, and we were lucky to have someone, Leah, she's amazingly organized and focused, and she got us through the project, which, as Kerem mentioned, it's quite a project. It's a big undertaking. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I would just second that. Mascoma Bank became a certified B Corp in 2017, and our chief marketing officer, Samantha Paz, is effectively our chief B Corp officer, and she has since certification led us through recertification. But you're right, there's a point person, a project manager, somebody who's trying to pull all the pieces together is just so important.
So I guess another, this may be the final question, Todd, unless you have other questions you want to ask, but we did get one. which I think for those that are out there listening who may not know a ton about B Corps, they might be learning about it here for the first time, and they might be really intrigued in starting to dig into this. Where do they start? What would be the best suggestion as to where they go, where they start to learn more about this and how to proceed forward?
I would just jump in and say, they ought to reach out to any one of us, and we're happy to make connections as appropriate to the rest of the B Corp community here in the state and elsewhere for that matter. I don't know. Other thoughts, you guys?
On target.
Absolutely. bcorporation.net is the website for B Corp certification, and there are tons of resources. There's almost too much, at least for your first go at it. You're gonna find out so much information there that it's going to be a little overwhelming. So totally agree that having a conversation with an existing B Corp is an amazing starting place.
And I'll just say out to all the people who are listening, if any of you are interested in learning more, feel free. If you have contacts for any of the people on this call, they are all awesome human beings, and I know they'd be willing to have a conversation with you. You can also reach out to me or the chamber we've got a generic email, chamber@portlandregion.com. Let me know that you're interested, and I will happily put you in contact with the individuals on this panel. That might be a really good way to get started, just talking to somebody who has gone through it, who can help point you in the right direction. And I'm sure you are all an incredible support team to one another. Becky, I'm sure you've leaned on some of the other B Corps in the area as you've gone through your own process. So I think that's incredible. And I see, Kerem, do you want to mention one last thing before we wrap up the program about legislation that passed?
So that's really good stuff. So legislation is in play and it's been approved that allows the state, and this was championed by Shayna Billows and Victoria Morales, champions the inculcation, the encouragement of B Corps in Maine. So that's the first step towards making sure that the B Corps have the state support going forward. So it sets the foundational elements for how do we as a group, as a community, get organized and be able to articulate the value. So we should be able to perhaps access some dollars. Or going forward, are there incentives for companies like the B Corp, either from some sort of a tax point of view or some other mechanisms? What are those ways and methods that the state and the community can partner together? So at least that legislation was, I think, unanimously passed, Todd. I believe it was just completely unanimous. Going through sets the stage for the next several that hopefully come down the pike in the next 3-4 legislative sessions. So it's really, really good stuff.
It is great stuff, and it also applies to benefit corps. And we probably could have a whole nother panel discussion on certified B Corps, benefit corps, conscious capitalism, et cetera. But it's great. It's great progress.
We have been asked, and we don't need to, I know we're running out of time, but there was a question about whether there were incentives around being a B Corp. And one specific question just came through around, is there a tax benefit yet to being a B Corp?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
That's great. That's excellent to know. Todd, before I wrap it, anything else that we wanted to mention?
No, I think it's been a great panel discussion. Thank you, Quincy. Thanks, Kerem, for hosting and sponsoring, and thanks to the panelists. I think this was terrific.
This was an awesome conversation, and I am so proud to work with all of these organizations on this call, businesses and business leaders who are so invested in your employees, in your organizations, in your community towards sustainability. I mean, this was really inspiring, and I want to thank each and every one of you for just the incredible work that you do in our region. Again, this was just such a fantastic conversation. I told the group earlier, we did a B Corp event probably 3 years ago, and people left like almost giddy. They were just so excited to hear about the B Corp possibility and just how companies who were B Corps, how they talked about it and how invested they were and their employees were in being a B Corp. So Again, Rob, Ben, Becky, Kerem, thank you so much for being here. Kerem, thank you and GWI for your sponsorship of this event. Todd, incredible job moderating this discussion. So a thanks to you and Mascoma Bank. And with that, it's probably a wrap. I'll just do 2 plugs for 2 upcoming chamber events. We have our annual event, which sadly is virtual, on June 9th. So I hope you can tune in to celebrate our award winners, those people who really went above and beyond during the last really challenging year. And on June 16th, we have our last eggs and issues of our season, and we will have none other than Governor Mills joining us. So again, thank you all to all the panelists. Thank you all to who joined us today. This is recorded, so you will be able to find this presentation on your website. And with that, everyone have a great day and enjoy the sunshine.